Now for business updates across the African continent, Rotus Oderi joins us. Good morning, Rotus. How are you today?
Yeah, fine. Good morning, Ira. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all of viewers. Look, Rufai, well said on the Naira redesign and those who are not really caring for the everyday people and deciding when they want to go and protest. But Vice President Osinbajo is calling for more fintech. Probably have to, break this down a little bit. He says he wants more fintech players to be able to handle the load when we see what's been going on with respect to delays in electronic payments, delays in POS, delays in transfers, and so on and so forth. And ironically, because we want to become a cashless society, the fact that less people are able to use cash has meant that the system has been, has been burdened. So now the question is whether or not the system as we know it, the payment infrastructure can be expanded. So if we take a look at a tweet, I think, this conversation also was happening on Twitter. So this gentleman here says, Fintech today, Fintech tomorrow. Nobody has been able to build an infrastructure system to rival NIBS as the interbank settlement system and provide redundancy. All of you want to build savings, investment, and diaspora remittance. So there was a big debate on it. Someone responded to him saying NIBS is a national switch and interbank settlement system. It belongs to the government. That's not entirely accurate. The banks have an input on that. Fintechs are only built on the infrastructure that exists. It's like asking car manufacturers why they don't fix potholes on the road in Lagos. Shout out to the infrastructure in Lagos. So if we look at NIBS pitch payment functions, you've got the switching, which is essentially what provides the interoperability between the banks, where if you transfer bank A to bank B, they're able to recognize each other. You've got the PTSG, which is the payment terminal service aggregation that, of course, makes sure that all those payments go through. And then, of course, the FSI, which is Financial Services Innovators. NIBS is also part and parcel of that development. So the thing is, though, if you look at how the NIP, the Instant Payment System infrastructure works, right? How do you expand on this here, where you make a transfer from bank A to bank B, NIP recognizes it, and then NIBS facilitates that payment? This is what is being burdened right now. So, but the thing is, the infrastructure, if you use the road analogy with the potholes, if one road closes down, which is cash, and then everybody overloads themselves on the other road, which is the electronic payments, you now have to build out that infrastructure. But that responsibility still falls with the government, essentially, or with NIBS and essentially the infrastructure that they put together, and the banks. So even though you have more fintech players coming in, it is still the same infrastructure. So the question now is, how do you build that out? So that is what is in front of us as of right now. If we want to get more cashless, and if we want to get more electronic payments, that's the question. So it's really good that this is coming up now and that we're seeing all these delays, because now the emphasis is on the players in the sector to try to build out that payment infrastructure, make it more widespread so that we can actually get to where we need to be in terms of cashless. Because look, as far as instant payments, Nigeria ranks 6th in the world, just behind China, Vietnam, India. We're the highest ranked African nation with respect to the speed with which payments are made, even ahead of the UK, US, and other countries. So it's just a matter of building that system out now and making it bigger. So here is that challenge for us. Still on, I think we moved to Ghana now. Idris Elba he met with Nana Akufo-Addo, I think it was on Friday or Thursday. He's planning on shooting a movie later this year, and he's been calling for more film incentives. Let's listen to what he had to say to the president.
Of African filmmaking, but the facilities around that are something that is lacking. In South Africa, they have a big facility. A lot of film production goes there. But quickly, as we're planning this, we realize that policy is where the actual groundwork needs to be laid. We've studied the models of obviously South Africa, who have an incredible incentive package. Then around Europe, obviously Greece, Morocco. These are all places where they realize the value of the filmmaking dollar, and have brought that policy into play. Tony, Danny, and the film.
National Film Authority.
National Film Authority have, done the work, put together a very comprehensive plan to propel Ghana into the forefront. It needs to be robust. It needs to be competitive to the rest of the world. But we believe for sure, and I know you believe this too, it's been part of your legacy that you want to leave as well, that, you know, Ghana should step up in terms of attracting those filmmakers. I think one of the things to just highlight for you, you know, what I want to do personally myself, I have a film that I'm directing, and I'm hoping to bring that film, or at least some of that film, to shoot in Ghana. That film will be, I would say we would be here in December. We start pre-production in August. Some of the film, 2 or 3 weeks, will be in Ghana, say by December. Hopefully, if we were to move with a fair wind and we were in agreement of what we could do in terms of the policy, we could case study my film as a proof of concept. I mean, you know, needless to say, it would take a lot of collaboration to move quickly. However, it would be very beneficial for us to show and to make an announcement to the world that Ghana is open for business. Here is the steps, the policies are in place, and we have actually bringing a film, one of the soil, I might say, to our country, and we're going to put our money where our mouth is.
So if you remember when The Woman King came out back in October, we had a long conversation, that's where you came on board, but we had a long conversation about, it was The Woman King was shot in South Africa. We talked about all the incentives that South Africa puts forward to attract movies here. And Idris Elba mentioned that several times, the South African model. We also talked about Tom Cruise shooting his latest Mission Impossible film in South Africa. So, you know, that's essentially what he wants to replicate in Ghana. And, you know, if we think about us here with Nollywood here, Nollywood is great, it's big, but is Nollywood generating USD? Are we bringing in do we have the incentives to attract filmmakers? And then you now talk about security and other things. But anyway, that's what's there with Ghana. In South Africa, it's just protests. Ramaphosa is giving a State of the Union address this week. I think it's on the 9th. There was a protest for there's a wage, a living wage that they set up in 2020 when COVID hits. I think it's about 340 rand to citizens at the bottom of the pyramid. Some folks there went to protest and say that should be increased to like 1,500 rand or so. So they want him to mention this. Also, ESCOM. A number of people protested at ESCOM's. This was a poster they put out, I think Thursday or Friday, put together by Stand Up South Africa. They were protesting on Friday, I believe, at ESCOM's headquarters over the tariff that's been increased to 18%. ESCOM wanted 32% on the tariff, so they aren't even happy, but it's still going up, and I think it's effective April. We can listen to one of the protesters who had something to say, and 20 is his name or so.
And the recovery of outstanding debts from citizens, municipalities and businesses that are not paying. ESCOM has to improve its debt collection. Why is it that some municipalities don't pay, and yet the lights are on? And then ESCOM complains they don't have money. And then they go and ask for 18%. Why don't you go to the nearby municipality there and there? You know them.
Mr. Oberholzer, who is the present Chief Operating Officer of ESCOM, is retiring effective April. ESCOM is eliminating the position of Chief Operating Officer because it's being broken down into 3 subsidiaries. So these protests have been continuing, and in the midst of all this, as the protests have gone on, ESCOM is now trying to make changes because I think they are moving into generation, transmission, and so on. So they are eliminating that position of this man, Jan Oberholzer. And then finally, that's the gentleman that's retiring, and they're eliminating his position. Yeah, you notice that Tottenham defeated Manchester City yesterday, 1-0. Yeah, and Tottenham is also in the news, not just for sports, but with South Africa. So South Africa's tourism board, in principle, have signed a 1 billion rand deal with Tottenham, to where Tottenham is supposed to promote tourism in South Africa. But there have been some backlash because people are saying, why will you pay 1 billion rand to Tottenham? They're saying that the money will come back into the economy. In fact, here's the interim CEO of South Africa's tourism board sounding pretty defiant in a press conference.
This is not about football. So the whole conversation about we are supporting Team A and not Team B is a misguided conversation. We are accessing the audience in the British Premier League. We are accessing it so that we can persuade them to travel to South Africa, spend pounds, euros, dollars, yen in our destination and bring dignity back to our people. That is what we're doing. It's about the aggregated audiences.
And hey, how long was Michael Wilson in Cape Town? So they're trying, again, like the Ghana thing with the film, South Africa, but then, by the way, the chief financial officer of the South African Tourism Board, it turns out he is linked with the agency that is putting this deal together. So there's some, there's some funny stuff going on there.
I mean, when the guy was opening his eyes wide and saying, we need to build the audience from the English Premiership, obviously when you're lying.
Yeah.
When kick it back, you're lying. There was a kickback in that deal. I don't have problems with those deals.
Yeah.
But what I have problems with is the scrutiny.
Yeah.
You need to be able to open it up.
For transparency.
Because you don't see the effect, run of the mill. And I'll give you an instance. You remember when Rwanda did the same with Arsenal?
With Messi? Was it Messi? No,
with
Messi.
Arsenal,
yeah, okay.
Rwanda. You get?
Yeah.
I think that was about 40 million US or thereabout, some ridiculous amount of money. What was the knock-on effect? So you can't really, be able to ascertain. Yes, you are getting a lot of eyeballs, but is it having a knock-on effect? And is it done? Is that the best deal possible?
Yeah, for tourism.
Does it have to be Tottenham? Couldn't it have been other, teams, like a team that was just recently promoted? Because it's still the television right you're trying to tap into. So could you do it better?
Yeah.
And that's it. So there was corruption in that deal. And it was obvious because the guy wanted to take a 1.5 million
initial pound payment.
Pound payment kickback. So moving on, I'm happy about the fact that you talked about, building the architecture. So I'm
for NIBS, right?
For NIBS, because I also play in this space in my former
So why is the architecture? Okay, we'll press you now. Why is the architecture not improved?
In my former life, I also played in the fintech space. Trying to build an app.
Okay, answer now.
The problem is this.
Yeah.
The banks are not pulling their weight. And also there's the jackpot effect that they've not been able to ramp up architecture as regards their own, back end, as regards digital banking and the likes. But also what you need to do is use NITDA to be able to create a very good sandbox, all right?
Yeah.
Where people can innovate along that and build on the back of NIBS. And once you do that, it can be improved upon. Also, we need to have a country where we can liberalize the system in such a way that there can be other gateway payments that can also be linked. So multiple architecture build that can also be linked to NIBS doing that same work. So it's a conversation we must have. But also, and this goes back to the CBN, the barrier to entry also has to be reduced for people that want to play in the fintech space. I know they want to securitize. They don't want people to lose their money. People just set up some kangaroo shop and go. But also, you also have to build that sandbox so that people can innovate. Then you widen the ecosystem. It can be done. You have a lot of great Nigerians working in that space. And with that, we've done so well. And I'm happy you spotted it out in terms of online payments. But we can only do better. And that's why sometimes I wish all these billions these politicians are putting in their rooms that is rotten away.
Can go into fintech.
You can bring it out and give all those young boys in Yabacon Valley to be able to innovate, but they will not do it. It's to steal the money to buy votes during the election that they know to perpetuate themselves in power and continue state capture.
Well said.
And when CBN brings policy now, they start to shout.
So just two things I'd like to talk about. So when the South African protest started, particularly with Eskom, and of course their bid to buy into Tottenham Hotspur to attract tourism into South Africa, what some of the critics had mentioned was that they prefer that the money was invested in their power sector because local businesses were losing out. So what's the point of attracting tourists into the country if they're not able to, if they have a power or energy crisis? That tourism has suffered since the load shedding started. As you come into to South Africa, you have issues with power. So they felt the money could have been put to better use by investing in the nation as opposed to investing in Tottenham. So there are a number of for and against with regards to the Tottenham deal. Yes, they only attract investment, attract tourism and boost the economy, but they're talking about fixing internal issues first. And the second thing I want to just make a case for, in the same way that Idris Elba went to Ghana to make a case for the growing the film industry in Ghana, attracting international investors through policy, I'd also like to make a case for Nollywood. PwC in its estimates 2022 to 2024 forecast said that Nollywood the entertainment industry in Nigeria has the potential to be the fastest growing entertainment sector in the world, with a potential GDP growth rate rate of 8.6% per annum. Unfortunately, this government hasn't been very good to the entertainment industry, despite the fact that if there's any growth in this industry, I must accord honor and respect to our Nigerian people who have worked tirelessly. And I look forward to a government who is interested in growing that sector.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
Should anybody be surprised that Idris Elba, like other filmmakers, want to go and do their film in Ghana?
Ghana, yeah.
This is not the first time. In 2015, he was there to shoot Beast of No Nation.
Yeah.
But this time around, he says, look, the responsibility of government is to put policies in place and provide incentives. Now, that's, straightforward thinking. Makes sense. Government's responsibility is to provide an enabling environment. And he was not just talking about culture, he was talking about investment.
Yes.
Now, people go to Ghana. It's not just filmmakers who want to go and shoot films in Ghana. Many businesses have relocated from Nigeria to Ghana. So, and it's just because of the environment. And under that umbrella, you can talk about security, you can talk about infrastructure, you can talk about a number of other things. Despite the fact that Ghana is not a well-managed economy, but at least there is the environment.
Exactly.
Here in Nigeria, where we have failed mainly is at the level of policy. I've made the argument here, that look, cultural policy is part of the development process.
Indeed.
If you don't have an overarching cultural policy and you do not have people who understand culture at the commanding heights of the cultural industry, then of course you get the kind of disconnect that we have in Nigeria. Quickly, what is the kind of disconnect we have here? We have Bank of Industry. We provide support for filmmakers in Nollywood. But if you ask players in that space, they will tell you that, look, it's so difficult to access the loan. And if one or two persons are able to access the loan, the majority are left out. Two, yes, government recognizes that Nollywood is a major foreign exchange earner. But people, Nigerian leaders, you see the mindset. One leader the other day was referring to somebody as a Nollywood actor, which is to give the impression that Nollywood is not important. The Actors Guild of Nigeria had to issue a statement to say, don't put down this industry that even contributes to GDP and helps to promote the image of the country. So the policy environment is very important, and it's good that Idris Elba also cited the example of a country like Morocco. One, fintech, you put your finger on it, infrastructure. Okay, we're told that the fintechs have mobile money agents who are all over the place and should be integrated. How about the point you raised about infrastructure? If you go to any store now, you want to use this as a point of sale, whatever, and even people, who try to use these mobile money agents, the problem is serious. Beyond the backbone, the infrastructure, how about internet connection? You can stay on the queue for almost 1 hour. They'll say, oh, this POS is not working. Some stores now even have about 4. So maybe this lack of infrastructure is what is responsible for rating power. Finally, South Africa. Yes, you made a point. The people are protesting. Democratic alliances, this is an act of folly. The big issue is that private sector tourism associations in South Africa are saying, you are not supporting us. You promised collaboration. Nothing came out of it, but you want to go and buy a club in England. And secondly, 1 billion rand. Why don't you use that to save ESCOM? And of course, that's familiar. But Kumalo is saying, look, we'll go ahead with it. But the major problem was that the proposals were leaked. And he says they will deal with that. But they've not signed yet. It's only conditional approval. But we'll see how it goes. Yesterday, when Tottenham won, they were saying SA tourism beats Man City. So some people have adopted Tottenham Sports already ahead of the January 9 State of the Nation address. Anyway, thank you very much, Rotus.